So, first of all, Gary, thank you very much, mate. I appreciate joining this morning. You're a very busy man, so it was good to kind of get some time locked into the diary. We've obviously known each other for a long time. I was going to say when we first met, you had a load of hair, but unfortunately for you, wasn't the case. Since then, you've lost it. But no, you actually look very similar. You've not aged a bit, mate. Yeah, look, I'm keen. Could you give us a kind of brief introduction to yourself, a little bit about you, for the listeners, please?
Yeah, morning, Gareth, and yeah, thanks. First off, thanks for having me on. I think as somebody who's worked with you for a number of years, for me, seeing what you guys are doing up at ORRJO is great to see, and certainly I'm very pleased and proud to join you on this first and foremost. I've definitely aged a bit. Working with you gave me some grays, but I see you caught them as well, so so that's all good. Yeah, so a little bit about me. So I'm Gary Rosier-Taylor. Again, from a role perspective, I'm VP of Sales. Systems Group, joined there via an acquisition of a business called Locals back in 2023. And continue, or now lead the whole of our kind of EMEA fleet business. So all of our fleet technologies, from telematics products, route optimization, mobile execution, and tachograph analysis, and so forth. So certainly a lot going on in my mind in terms of fleet technology, but yeah, that's my kind of role and responsibility.
Nice, thank you, Gary. And we'll certainly dig into more of that a little bit later on. But
for sure.
The general run of things here, which worked quite well for us, is kind of going a little bit back and hopefully helping some people that are maybe not quite reached the level you have yet, but are certainly like looking at yourself and thinking, like, that looks unbelievable. I'd love to get to VP level and different things. Can you take us back to where it all kind of started? Windsor, if I'm not mistaken. Talk me through a bit about kind of school life. How did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? Did you do well? Go from there.
Yeah, great question. And yeah, Windsor. So born in Bedford, raised in Windsor. The Queen and now the King's home. Life as a kid was pretty good. My parents certainly installed a level of work ethic in me, in the way that they worked. From their respective careers. My dad owning his own business, and my mum in the education sector. So. Yeah, life was pretty. I say plain sailing. I've not got any gory stories or let's call it skeletons in that particular, let's call it home life area. One thing before I dive through, and a few years ago, I think in fact we had a session when you and I worked together, and I found it really difficult to talk about at that particular point in time. But over the past few years has made me much more comfortable talking about the topic, especially as I've now got a family myself. As a child, I was adopted, but from birth. So, there's a multitude of things that go through as a 16-year-old finding that information out, wanting to explore, my heritage, my roots, my understanding, but having to navigate the world of wanting to find this out, but obviously not offending my parents, and they are my parents for all intents and purposes. I really struggled with that, mentally, not knowing things that I wanted to know, but then not wanting to offend people. Like I really struggled with that perspective. That's become much easier to speak about over time, and actually, talking is so useful to do that. And that was probably one of the first conversations where I think specifically I broke down on a particular conversation we had with the whole team, because it was talking about things that people didn't know about individuals, and that was something. The mindset that I struggled with was I always had something to prove, and I certainly took that into my schooling life as well. And I enjoyed school, but I think I was blessed with the people around me, the friends that I had, and still have today. At a very good school as well, which certainly leaned into what I was interested in, which was sports. Very sporting kind of upbringing in that respect, and I didn't struggle. I wasn't an A star performer, but I certainly wasn't a D's and E's and F's. I enjoyed this. Yeah. wasn't you. But I'm definitely one of those people where, I always had something to prove, and proving somebody wrong was more valuable than proving myself right. And that's maybe something that's kind of shaped a sales career in some way. But yeah, never specifically struggled and thoroughly enjoyed my time at school. Yeah, that's probably the best thing I'll say.
And was it 16 you were when you found that out? That kind of
yes,
news?
yeah. So both my sister and I were adopted, and sneakily I found out through my parents telling my sister at 18. I was sat at the side of a door going, "Yeah, what's going on?" And that's kind of how I found out, which was also probably a mistake on my part, but also my parents not knowing that kind of information made things harder to talk about and share.
That's tough, man. And I do remember actually you sharing that with myself and the team, and it was a tough one, but one we certainly all appreciated kind of hearing, just obviously backgrounds, and I think everybody goes through different stuff, like and different challenges, don't they? And I think it's very difficult if you've kind of come from more traditional, or I don't want to say normal, I don't think that's maybe the right way to put it at all. It's not, I don't mean that, but like it's hard almost to consider or think about that and how that somebody would feel and stuff. So I actually do vividly remember, and I think even after that, you and I had some pretty deep conversation and stuff over the last like following that, didn't we, about stuff? And
yeah.
But I guess though it helped us probably get closer and understand each other more and understand mindset, motivation, and stuff, doesn't
it? For sure, 100%. And I don't. Again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Being able to talk and share these stories about your background, your history, and your life, and how that impacts you is so important. And I personally never realised how important it was for the other way around. I was leading a team at the time, and for them to know that was super important. But I think the thing that really helped is obviously I'm a child, and we were sort of in that stage of life where we were planning our wedding at the time, which obviously then led to talk of starting a family in some way, shape, or form. And I think my mindset, because she was on the other foot, I was on the end of being adopted, not on the not the one on the other side.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to naturally conceive. Then, if that doesn't happen, you obviously have methods, and many of my friends have been through the IVF process, and I think it's one of the hardest things, especially from a male perspective, to talk about. Is hey, we're having to go through IVF. Like it's a really tough conversation to have with some of your best mates, especially when some of those have conceived naturally, and you're sat there going, it's always an option. But then to not draw the line if IVF isn't successful, and there are cases of that happening. I've certainly had friends in that particular world and saying, like, adoption is absolutely an option, and it was absolutely on the table for my wife and I, Ellie, and it is without question the most selfless thing that anybody could ever do was to give all their love to a child that is not naturally theirs. And that's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
Flip it the other way around. As a 16-year-old learning this information, I was unwanted. Now that is an incredibly hard thing to learn at an age when you're doing a lot of growing and thinking about your future and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And so I had this negative connotation of like as an unwanted individual, an unwanted child. But you flip it the other way around, and actually, as an adult, and you learn things through life. Jesus, that for me is one of the most phenomenal things, and we're actually expecting a second one now in September. Touch wood, thank everything that we have conceived naturally. That's fine. If that hadn't been the case, we absolutely would have gone down that route. And so just super interesting.
Totally, and I think it is amazing to see and hear the realities of it. yeah, it's something very close to my heart as well, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I think I've obviously seen how you are with the little one and stuff, and how much you adore him and things like that. And you can just see that's, you know, you burst with pride, you know, when like, you see the holiday snaps and all that kind of good stuff. And so I can see
sometimes.
Yeah. That's like social. You show what you want to show.
Yeah.
The rest of the time you're kind of like throttling them, but no. Like, so I know the feeling with Archie, but no, it is brilliant, and it's a gift that you know is incredible. But I think
keeps giving every minute of every day.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny actually. I said I'm going to see if I can get this on camera. Let's see if this works. It's a little picture of Archie.
A few years ago.
This was like this. Yeah, exactly. It was literally like 4.5 years ago, whenever it came up in my featured photos on my iPhone, and I showed it to him. Well, I actually sent it to my mum and dad, and I said, "Oh, this is before he turned into a gobshite." But I showed it to him this morning. I was like, "Oh, actually, this is when you used to have hair like a kiwi fruit," and he was like, "Shut up, Daddy!" I was like, "He's absolutely nuts." But no, it's it's unreal, and I think like. And so when you think about your time at school in Windsor, you obviously done pretty well. I'd be doing you a massive disservice if I didn't bring up your running career as well. So talk me. So obviously you mentioned a little bit about sport being a huge component of your childhood and upbringing. Talk us through a little bit about your running career. Before you did a marathon with me.
Yeah. It's the highlight. That's the highlight. Seeing you crawl over that finish line. So I think you know, from a schooling perspective, sports was such a big part of the school, and you know, certainly a lot of the guys so it was an all boys school, so a lot of the guys that I went to school with were very much into that as well. It was, you know, rugby was the predominant sport, but football, hockey. Facilities that we had rowing, facilities we had
unbelievable.
Was fantastic. Certainly one of the state schools, in my opinion, that had access to a level of sport that you know most would not have access to. So it was very fortunate in that world. And the head teacher at the time, Mr. Dawkins, fantastic, wonderful guy. Really embraced that as well. The downside was he was from Wales and absolutely loved Welsh rugby. That was probably one of the negatives. But you know, I just got involved in everything. You know, there's a guy that I grew up with, super friendly with. You know, I was maybe slightly overweight. Let's put it. You know, child coming into sort of 13, 14 years of age. One of my best mates.
Gary, can I also say the one thing I have to highlight is your diet is probably one of the worst I've ever seen in my life. So you typically only eat chocolate, ketchup, and is it like hot dogs and stuff? Like, is that still the case, or do you need to pretend you eat better now?
I think you're confusing me with one of our former colleagues. So our office let's call options were very limited at one point in time.
True, that's true, but I think it fitted
pretty much the only options.
Your target,
So but going back in time, like, you know, this guy, his name's Ed Lake. Wonderful guy, most relaxed individual. You know, probably the best footballer I've ever seen. You know, embraced football to Salau as a very young kid, but he was, you know, the fittest person I'd ever known. And one summer holidays, he was like, "Let's just go for a run," and he sort of dragged me around, and all of a sudden I thought, I'm actually not that bad at this. You know, coming through school cross countries, I went from, you know, finishing 35th, 50th, etc., to winning it and beating him. You know, within a couple of years, and it really sparked something, because I had in my opinion, that was a very competitive edge. Like I hated losing, because go back a little bit. You know, I had this mentality. I always had to prove something. So probably around 16, 17, I really started taking athletics more seriously and kind of taking my time away from. And I played hockey for England at one point.
Jeez.
But again, I kind of think logically there was really no career or financial incentivization to move into that as a career. that and the fact that I got hit around the head a few times with a hockey stick, and I've got far too many scars to prove it. And then so just transitioned into putting more time and effort into it. It was very convenient for my parents as well, because my dad's business was based over in Eton, and on Eton College grounds they had a big athletics track, which was the home of Windsor, Slough Eton, and now Hounslow. So it was very convenient for somebody to drop me there, and my dad, it was almost free childcare at one point, for my parents. Thoroughly embraced it, thoroughly got into it, got really good, by nothing short of just putting in the effort and putting in the grind. And, from, winning national titles to, I think for 4 or 5 years on the bounce, I was winning, local level events from cross countries all the way through to 5 and 10Ks, which was great money. That was fantastic money.
Really?
17, 18. Yeah. If you win a local level event, Maidenhead half marathon, I think I was 18, and I 10K part of the half marathon, and that was £500. Now, as a 17, 18-year-old, going, this is great. If I could do this every weekend, it would be fantastic. Then reality sets in, and you go, you can't do that every weekend. It's just physically impossible. Yeah, thoroughly invested into it. Transitioned and Olympic B standard qualification. Certain things didn't go my way, injuries. I was doing a fairly local level race, and somebody tripped me up, hit a steeplechase barrier, which was my event. Mainly because nobody else wanted to do it. I wasn't quick enough to do the 5K. I wasn't strong enough to do the 10K, but nobody else wanted to do the 3K steeplechase because it was a bloody hard event. I can say this now. It fundamentally is the hardest event on the track. And those who've done it, Mark Buckingham's, who's still involved in the sport today, they'll tell you. It's the hardest event by sure. And nobody wanted to do it. So it was relatively easy in comparison to do well. So I wouldn't say I was a tier 1 athlete. I would say I was probably tier 2, tier 3 athlete. And trying to pave my way in that world, injuries hit, and that very, very rapidly brings you back down to earth. And I just didn't have the mindset, the financial backing to be able to stick that out. For those who were involved in, there's even reports today of British athletics of a tier 2 athlete getting £16,000 to £20,000 for all of their funding for a year, and they're expected to train full time. It's fundamentally not enough money, and so
it's below minimum wage, isn't it? Even
it's
quite a bit below minimum.
Yeah, it's financially not viable to be able to do that, let alone fund your fuel. Food was the biggest thing, and food will cost for somebody who's doing 100 miles a week of training.
Yeah,
it's not possible. So so it kind of took a step away from that in probably 2008, 2000. It still sits in the back of my mind as like what if, but yeah, it's what it is.
That's cool, man. And so when you were doing that, were you working as well, or were you kind of too busy to work kind of like part-time jobs and stuff?
Yeah, no. So I was working. So first job was at the athletic centre. It was a great opportunity for me to work and train at the same place at the same time. Your commute from one to the other was very, very easy. Simple to put your mind into a passion of yours as well, and love the area that I was training in, and wanted to make sure that it was nice, clean, tidy for not just me but all the other athletes that were there. And our club had some phenomenal people involved in it, from Hayley Yelling as a fantastic advocate for the sport. She won multiple, I think, European cross country titles. So Mo Farah was part of our ethos and our part of our group. Incredible human being, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and it was a wonderful place to be around, working and then being able to train alongside
Yeah.
those names as well was out of this world.
And so talk us through a little bit about your kind of pivot into the kind of more corporate / sales world. Like what made you, I mean, I've got a good idea, but what kind of made you choose sales? Was it sales you chose, or did it choose you, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, I don't think, but kind of slightly bit of a backstory or slightly bit of a change in direction of conversation a little bit is like one thing I'm a fundamental believer of is we don't teach people in school or in the schooling curriculum of careers in sales. Every single person that I generally talk to is nobody dreams of being a salesperson. It has so many negative connotations. We've changed the title from sales manager or sales director into account manager, client exec. Why? It's like there's this negative connotation of the word sales. I think people should do a lot about it, and I've seen some of the work you're doing with like Glasgow Caledonian. I think that's fantastic because we're educating people on, hey, sales is a career. It's a great career if you choose to go down that path. So slight pivot there in terms of conversation. But sales, I kind of just fell into it. I fell into the world by working in a running retailer at one point, and I found that selling shoes to people was good. Was relatively easy. Because it was something I was passionate about. They were clearly coming in to learn something from somebody who knew something more. That sort of transitioned pretty seamlessly and easy for me. I think that same track kind of replays itself today. If you're passionate about something enough, it makes having a conversation really, really, really easy. I could talk about fleet technology now and like what's my why. My why was really easy with running shoes. I wanted people to enjoy running as much as I did at the time. Pretty simple. So I fell into it there. Realized that retail was probably not the financial gain that I had my dreams, hopes, and aspirations to work in and to live in. Buying a house in Windsor was not going to be easy on a retail salary, right? And you always want to stay around your family and your friends, and I had this aspiration of staying in Windsor all my life, and needless to say, that's not happened. The financial aspirations kind of took over, which led me into the technology space to find out and find my path in software as a service.
And obviously, you've worked extensively in the US and different things. Can you talk us a little bit through about some of your kind of earlier roles in sales then? So like as you were kind of moving into like that account exec space, or even as a BDR, SDR, which I don't think you did much of, did you? It was more straight into AE stuff.
It was more. Again, I'd say that probably the titles the way that titles have changed over the course of the last sort of 15 to 20 years within sales probably shows that I didn't do those things, but they were absolutely part of my role and responsibility. Yeah, so the first role was actually an online dating company, and it was effectively a platform or a solution. I've got some stories out there, Jack, and I can assure you of that. Where we would or effectively sell into predominantly media outlets. Yours magazine is a fantastic example of an over 50s kind of magazine that people would utilize, and they would need to generate revenue from unsold advertising space, at which point you could rebrand and reskin a platform, and that was who we sold to, and I loved that. I loved that world. It was challenging me in an area that I didn't know, which was, let's call it media and that kind of world, whether it was magazines, whether it was TV. There was a whole new market there. Loved that. That taught me a lot because it was the media. Nobody prepares you for working in that media world, and it is absolutely as cutthroat as people describe it as, especially if you go back 20 years. I think things have probably calmed down a little bit now, but back then it was brutal. selling into those organizations was brutally tough. Yeah, so what was I there for? Probably 8 years, probably 2007 through to, 2015, 2016, so eight to 9 years. Really enjoyed my time, learnt a ton. I think I grew up in that organisation. Started as a wet behind the ears, let's call it traditional sales guy. Would just anything that comes in and you make a chunk of change, it was straight back out the door. And I think I left as somebody who was stockpiling, saving, and really formulating, for the kind of setting myself up for later life and trying through that. Their goal was to be an organisation that went through an acquisition. I think I learned a lot about who I should work with and who I should work for in that time. I think I stand, and if any of my former colleagues that worked in that business, they would probably agree with me. The CEO of that organisation was probably the wrong person to work alongside. It's incredibly greedy, and I learned a lot about greed, and where it serves people well, and it really serves people badly. And that was probably a turning point in my career to think about building for the future and qualifying who I want to work for rather than qualifying how much I want to earn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. That's a fantastic segue into working with me then. So you'd obviously done a lot of work to understand who you want, and then
bad qualification for me.
Yeah. Then our paths crossed. We've got Tom Wilson to blame for that, I think. So his name comes up a lot in these chats, actually.
Yeah.
But obviously you and I worked together for 5 years, longer?
5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years, I think it was. Yeah. And I think it was a really interesting time because we were going from Fleetmatics, which was pretty chaos. It was like obviously very salesy environment, very old school salesy environment, not one that would do well in today's world, I have to say. And we were trying to mature and move into a much more corporate setting, weren't we?
Yeah.
And you'd obviously come in from your experience there. You'd obviously spent some time at Gartner as well, and then joined us. And I think it was great though. I think you were definitely the difference that we needed to hopefully to take the kind of numbers and the team to that next and different level that we were at. I think we'd all been successful in the Fleetmatics environment, and then but there was a new world order coming. As you join a Fortune 50 company, it's just a different beast completely. And you've just got to be acting it's just a completely different animal entirely. And obviously now, you're heading up sales pretty much the whole of Europe now, isn't it? For
Whole of Europe.
Which is unreal. What for people that are kind of looking at your role and thinking, right, in the next 5-10 years, I'd love to be there. Can you walk us through some kind of tactical things that you've done over the last probably 5 or 10 years that's helped get you to where you are?
Yeah, they're a great question. There's so many things that I could springboard, but I think there's probably 2 things that I want to note first and foremost about, let's call it the time of Fleetmatics transitioning into the wonderful world of Verizon. And in fact, probably 3 things actually. First thing is when I joined the team and the business, there was very much a way that things had always been done, and that was the way things were going to get done. And the perception of change from a sales perspective was like, it's not possible. We can't do that. And the only way to challenge that is to go in and try and do it, and try and succeed in a way that we'd never succeeded before. And that could be, from a commercial perspective, that could be from a contract length term, it could be just the way you engage with a client and a customer. I think there was a number of things that we did, and never say never to certain things. And I took that away from probably 2 or 3 roles before Gartner and the online dating business as well, which I think I learned a lot of, like, if you don't change, you're going to stand still.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing. Second thing is professionalism. I remember my first day, and there's a guy who I say fell in love with. I think the relationship I had with Johnny over 5 or 6 years was phenomenal. One of the world's great nicest characters, and certainly grew to be a very, very close friend over time. He called me briefcase wanker because I walked in a suit and a briefcase. By the way, he's got history of doing these things on people's first days.
Yeah. Probably not for this, but yep.
Yeah. But I think that was probably an eye opener for the organisation and for the business to go, well, we'd always dressed in t-shirts and shorts or t-shirts and trousers. There's a guy here in a suit carrying a briefcase. That's different. That I think was a level of professionalism that maybe brought to the team that never had before. So there's those two, and then last of all is, I think, tactically, one of the things that I did as an AE or a sales exec in more common terms was I got super tight with the SDRs and the BDRs of the team, and I knew I'd win, and I knew I'd be the top rep for my entire career there. The moment I did something, and the 2 other sales execs were like, "Why are you doing this?" And I took 4 of the guys out who'd worked opportunities and worked deals collaboratively. I took them out for a celebratory curry.
Yeah.
The following day, after taking them out for a celebratory curry and a couple of beers, the other 2 sales guys who effectively I was pitched against and competing with, both of them sat me down and said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And immediately I was like, "I've won this game." And immediately after that, they started doing the same things, by the way, and I'm super happy for both of them, because they started to realize that doing things the same way, which was maybe the very hard, very traditional sales perspective or approach that they'd always done, the tweak, the adjustment, the change to maybe professionalism, relationship building across that team, I think really changed the way, not just for me, but for the whole business. And that's where, in my opinion, we went from where we were to absolutely skyrocketing and not losing deals that we should probably win anyway, but being super collaborative right the way from day one to close of a business. Those things are probably tactically what I saw from that kind of Fleetmatics into Verizon days make a huge difference.
And I'd agree with that. I think the work that you did and the time that you gave people was a different level than we'd done before. I think with that fresh set of eyes, whether maybe it is different perspective, maybe it's just different experience, not sure what you would maybe necessarily put it down to, but I think being able to see that actually, let's get a lot tighter here, let's do something we've never done before, a simple thing, small gesture can go such a long way.
Yeah.
You then pull all the SDRs wanting to work with you because they see the upside of the curries, the beers, the fun, and also it's the development and opportunity that then comes off the back of that naturally, which is really interesting. Obviously, you and I have done a lot of work together from a Descartes and ORRJO perspective as well, and that actually, I can see that still carries through with the work that you and your team do with my guys, has absolutely helped massively with what we do and how we do it. So what's really interesting, and for people that are listening, it's like, it's not doing it to tick a box, it's doing it because it's the right thing to do, and over time and consistency over time is what pays dividends, not, right, okay, the answer here is I'm going to take this guy and girl for a curry and a few beers and expect them to pave the way for me. It's not that. It's about actually seeing the bigger picture and saying, if I keep fucking doing this, keep showing up, keep supporting people, keep helping people, and doing that all the time, That's the difference maker. That's the difference maker. And I think, and I can totally agree. And as I say, this is where this is a little bit an interesting one, because I actually saw it unfold in the team, and I saw it actually happen in front of it, which is really good to see. And you could just still see, and even people that are still there today will definitely have benefited from that coaching and that support.
Something, and again, probably in my Gartner times, there's a guy called Marcus Staffen who led the team at the time. Fantastic guy, like one of the calmest heads that I've ever worked with. And I remember one of the things he said about any deal that you do, think of it like a baby. Right, and if you go back to children and go back to babies, right, it takes a village to raise a child. Right, it's not one person, it's not two people. It's your mum, your dad, your aunties, your uncles, your cousins, your sisters, your brothers. Everybody is involved in the growth of that child in some way, shape, or form. And so, when you take that and you look at deals, it's not my deal, it's our deal. And that, I think, was something that people didn't really think about, because sales guys, compared to the SDRs, these guys get the plaudits. They get the call outs in the big sales meetings. Yeah. It's not the SDR that drove the conversation or spent 120 phone calls or emails trying to get hold of that particular one business or one particular contact. That kind of gets missed. It's the 20 calls that you took to close a deal and work on problem solving, value creation, value proposition, etc., that gets the plaudits. But if you can take that person on that ride with you, educate them in what you're doing and how you're doing it, instead of taking 120 calls, the next time they're going to take 60. And that's where I think that it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to close a deal. Take those people on that journey with you. Don't be the individual that takes all the glory and takes all the plaudits. And I think sometimes, by the way, I've made that mistake as well by being I'm the big I am. We've all done that. I closed that deal. So, no, we closed that deal. Because even the software developer who created the dashboard here or the dashboard there, give them some credit, because if they hadn't done that, there's no way you're closing that deal. And so I think we have, the more or the quicker you can get into that in your career, especially being an AE sales exec, like for me, that's probably the biggest thing I learned the hard way, and then I saw it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think and as well, like when it comes to sorry, the point I'm trying to make, when it comes to sales, often everybody thinks, it's a selfish salesperson or whatever, right? And sometimes that is the case. Now, I would always argue that they might have a great year, a great run, or whatever it might be, or a great quarter, or whatever. But I believe success over time won't go to them. It is, and it's the people that are able to build the team lead as well. So if you're the AE, typically you're the person that's got the most experience in the room. If you're thinking about like AE and SDRs and different, they've probably just been in the game a little bit longer. Whether you're better or not, that is a completely different story, but you've probably just got a bit more time in the game. And I think they should be taking the natural lead of things, but you're absolutely right. They should be involving everybody and ensuring that everybody gets the fair share of success and reward and plaudits, like you mentioned there, because that's the leader's role. If you take the I did this, then you're not fucking leading. And you also then shouldn't be looking at it as if, okay, I want to get a sales director or VP or CRO role. If you can't see it in the way of it's a team game, it can't be done, because individuals don't win the overall. It just doesn't work like that, especially in sales, especially in competitive industries and markets and stuff. And then say, if people are looking to build a really successful, strong career over time, you can't do it on your own. It's all about, the people your network and all that kind of good stuff. And so when you're thinking about and you and I have probably both been in the same position, maybe late 20s, feeling maybe a little bit stuck about, maybe you've been in the same role for a while, or you've been in a role and you're like, I'm not really enjoying this, or you're not feeling as challenged as maybe it's just you're not doing as well, I don't know. But you're looking at maybe how to get into maybe a leadership role, or is there any kind of advice you give people, like to maybe anything that we've not covered already, that like you would, if somebody's feeling a bit stuck, is there some stuff that you think they could do immediately that maybe doesn't have to cost money? It doesn't, it's something that, but it's going to take effort.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, the first thing I would always say to somebody, and I had this default reaction to, I think, approaching you about leadership roles and leadership responsibilities is, with leadership doesn't always come financial gain or financial benefit. If you're doing it for financial benefit, give it up. Like stick with where you are, and for if people are sat there thinking, hey, I want to progress because I want the financial benefit, it's not always the case. And I certainly learned that, maybe the harder way. That's something some advice I would share straight off the bat. Second thing I would say is do the job. I remember specific points in time. Not just at formerly Verizon or now Verizon, even at White Label, even at Gartner, even every other organisation I've been at. I asked to be involved in certain things. Even if it was just spreadsheets, right? One of the things that I definitely was very strong at, you were definitely not that strong at spreadsheets, right?
You're my guy.
And so, but even understanding those numbers, that you were working with, you knew the numbers inside out, back to front, right? But you didn't have a spreadsheet to demonstrate or to depict or to show that. So building that and working with you meant that I now understood the numbers. So when I'm sat there thinking I want to do that deal, but it's the wrong deal to do, knowing why it was the wrong deal made it easier for me to detach from the reason why and taking the emotion out of it, right? And I'll come to the emotional piece in probably in a little bit, but that for me was one thing. Was do the job, and that's just one example of things. The others is hey, I want to take somebody under my wing, and there's a guy that now works for me, Connor. He's now worked for me at 3 businesses.
We love Connor,
and I trust him implicitly, and he's one of the nicest human beings. The most.
He even turned up on our Christmas weekend away.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened.
He knew that he wanted, just turned up for the free meal. He's great fun, and his girlfriend, brilliant.
But he's one of the most endearing characters that I've ever met in my life. And he's the son that I never had. Before Finley came along. I really do trust him with everything. And the journey that we went on. Before I was even a leader. That made the difference, and I think that probably showed yourself, Kirsty, Derek, probably the rest of the team, hey, this guy can actually lead people. He understands that, let's call it the numbers and the metrics, and he's already artificially leading somebody. He's having an impact on one person. What about having an impact on 2 or 3 people like that? That for me is the probably the 2 things that I did proactively that made a difference to leading people. The other thing is, from an emotional standpoint, and I kind of sort of reflect on this in various different guises. I was a very hot-headed is not the right word, but I was very emotional in terms of my response and my reaction. Yeah, you smile and go, yeah, that's you.
No, but same as me as well.
Same as me. Yeah. We're very similar, in certain ways. Delivering good news, that's really good. When you're giving positive or good news, keep the emotion in. When you're delivering or hearing negative news, take the emotion out. And if you can separate those 2 from, let's call it, negative news that maybe, the way you've worked a deal, you've lost something. If you can separate emotion to kind of, that particular thing, that I think is the point that you recognize and realize you're ready to lead somebody. Because giving somebody negative news or negative experiences, which is part of the job, the moment you fill that with emotion, you're not in a negative spiral. Like it's very difficult. So if you can detach yourself and take that emotion out of negative situations, that for me is one of the biggest things. And Part of that comes with understanding the business and the numbers. Part of that comes with, hey, I'm being leading somebody and they can't see me being emotional about something negative, and then there's kind of in front of the whole business and turning a positive into a negative into a positive.
No, I think really good points there. I think one of the words that I picked up on as well just before that point you made there was the proactive things that you did, and I think that ultimately is really important. You've got to be proactive and intentional with moving into that. Like you've got, like, the worst thing anyone could do is wait and expect it to happen. And I've said this time and time again. I've got obviously a fantastic team here, but some of them it's that they're grads, it's maybe their first roles or what have you. So you're trying to kind of coach some of these things into people is look. Don't wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder to give you the job or the role or responsibility or whatever. You've got to step up and proactively do the things to show that you're the person who's ready to take on that stuff.
Yeah, and you have to trust. That you think you're ready.
Yeah.
It was
how do
really.
You know? Do you think and again, this is just like. Is it your gut, do you think? Is it because you've gone and done some of the development yourself out of hours? Like, how do you feel as if you know?
Great, fantastic question. I'm trying to sort of rack my brain and think back to how did I know. I think the fact that I was not a leader at one point, but I was involved in virtually every leadership or management meeting in some way, shape, or form, or you're a source of advice. Right? I've got a guy that works for me today, and he absolutely has aspirations to be a leader in some way, shape, or form, and I will turn to him for advice. And the moment that you are that individual, like yourself, you came to me on a number of occasions, like how would you handle this? Kirsty at certain points, like we would do the same thing. Like how would you handle it? How would you handle it? And you'd spring back. That's when I think and you have the comfort that you're ready to do that, and to take on that leadership. And so you have to trust that.
One thing I would say, right, I look back, one of my favourite times working was when I was that right-hand man to someone, and I didn't have the drama of being the fucking leader and having to deal with all the shit that comes with it. I could just be the sales guy that made the money. And then I was trusted to give advice and support people, but I didn't have all the shit that came with it. So like, if someone's in that position, I would say fucking enjoy it. Like that kind of lieutenant role it's a good place to be, I have to say, because you get most of the good stuff and
you don't
very
have the stress.
Little of the shit stuff.
Yeah,
you can sleep at night. Put it that way.
1,000,000%. And that certainly, I certainly had that. Let's call it lieutenant status, especially from a closing, 100%. from a sales exec perspective, and I loved that. But I definitely didn't have the stress of is somebody turning up today? Is somebody going to hand in a notice? Yeah. What's happening to our marketing spend? What's happening to an inbound perspective? I didn't have that stress, and I think I owe a lot to Ellie. Yeah. I know Christina was a big part of your career progression, and we've had a number of conversations about that. But I think stability in my home life, which wasn't very stable up to that particular point in time of meeting Ellie, moving to North America, coming back, and yada yada. That gave me a lot of that responsibility and that kind of level of, I am ready to take this on. I am ready to lead a team. Prior to that, I don't think I was ready because I wasn't settled. I wasn't, and that's just me, by the way. That's not.
No.
You have to be settled to lead a team. I've certainly been managed and led by people in the past who, aren't married or don't have children. But there's a level of responsibility that I think I was ready for when I met my now wife. I owe a lot to her in giving me that stability, but also giving me the confidence in myself and my own ability to recognize what I want to go and achieve. Wanting a family is the same thing as having a team, right? And they are your children, for want of a better phrase, and I don't mean that in negatively. You care for them. You really do. And, you know, there is not one member of my team now today that I do not care for in the same way as, you know, my own family. And part of that comes down to the fact that you have a vested interest in how they perform because they're tied to you. And if you get that buzz out of seeing somebody go from, you know, trying to qualify an opportunity to then using mind maps to, because they're, you know, they have a level of, you know, maybe it's ADHD or maybe it's something or maybe it's an attention span thing, you know, and get them working. Those are one of some of my proudest moments. Not closing a deal, like that's my proudest moment because I know that that's also going to then close 30 deals, 40 deals, not just one. You know, I think that level of stability is there. Or for me, it was having stability in my home life. You know, I was kind of partially doing that job. I was being that lieutenant, and I just needed somebody to go, you know, go do it. You know, and have confidence in yourself. And
that break, and that's what most people need, isn't it? It's like all those components plus
totally.
An opportunity or plus a break equals the success of it. And it's an interesting point you're talking there about, like caring for the team. And I mean, look, I completely agree. I think when you're building a team that you actually care, that's how you create the culture. Like, I mean, people, as I say, I talk a lot about culture. I share stuff. I also take the piss out a lot of companies that try to suggest they've got culture and it's just because they've bought a Domino's pizza on a Thursday and we've got table tennis bats. We call it culture, but it's more. It's like, for me, it's genuinely caring for people. Like, actually though, and it's all of the other things around it. It's caring about how they are, how are they successful, are they supported, are they challenged, are they motivated, and that's like all the time. It's not like, well, let's do culture next month because it suits us better. It's like culture it's something that you kind of live and breathe in a business every day. And don't get me wrong, like, there's going to be tough times. That's just the nature of the beast. It's the nature of anything, whether you're an athlete, whether you're in business, whether you're whatever you're in, even if you're a teacher or something, there's going to be fucking tough days, and often lots of them, especially in today's world. But I think it's how you show up for your team. It's how you support them during those really difficult moments. And I think what's really important now, where we maybe, I think it was harder to do maybe historically from memory, is I'm much more open, much more vulnerable, much more, I don't, maybe as well because I'm that bit older now and I don't really give a shit, but like, I've got no problem saying and talking about how difficult something is. I've got nothing to prove to anyone. I don't give a fuck. So if I'll share it on LinkedIn, I'll share it in a video. Like, if somebody thinks what either we do or somebody else does is easy, I would say, come and fucking do it for a week, and you'll have grey hairs like that, or you'll have a hair like you. You know, and I think that this is the thing. You know, it's a big thing. It's like, you know, it's okay for you because you run your own business. It's like, oh, fucking hell, and you come and do a day work experience, and I'll share what that's like. But it does actually take me to a point that I'm keen for you to share. Lots of people will look at you and your role and your progression. It's just like a really, really good story, fantastic roadmap of, you know, that kind of direction to VP. Talk us through a day in the life of a VP of sales for a massive company. I mean, you guys are enormous.
Yeah. Fantastic question. Where to start? I mean, first things first is no day is ever remotely close to.
I thought you would say that.
Remotely close to each other, right? I think, and that I'd say that's very similar for business owners in various different guises, right? And I learned this the hard way. I really learned this the hard way. So moving into locals as an organisation, as a VC-backed organisation who you know, fundamentally were, you know, VC-backed organisations or startups, as we would call them, startup scale-up. You know, you are flying by the seat of your pants financially. You know, the next day could be the last, and treating any organisation, whether it's a corporate organisation or a startup, treating it like it's fine, it's a job, you know, I think is something that I did wrong. at a point in my career, I treat things as a job and like, hey, I'll be fine, like no problems. The moment I took that step into leadership at locals was the point in my career that I was like, treat this business like it's yours, spend money like it's yours. You know, like even to a point of today, like I will not do an overnight stay in Europe when I need to go and see a client. I will do first flight out in the morning, last flight back in the evening. For two reasons. One is I value and treasure my time with my family. But not only that, is that hotel that's £250, you know, because it's in the middle of Frankfurt or wherever it may be, it's really expensive. And if I wouldn't pay for it, why would I pay for it? Like, so treating that like yours is there. So it's not answering your question of like talking about a day in the life of. I guess probably I probably want to understand how much detail you want me to go into there, but yeah, treating a business, whether it's you know your patch, your area, your region, like it's your own, and your own money is my golden advice to anybody. If you can treat it like your own business, because you'll end up with grey hairs and grey hair, you know, and no hair, respectively, because you'll share that same challenge, right? And it's good, but I think it teaches you and educates you a lot. A day in the life. What is a day in the life? So my team are spread across. For me, my day generally starts pretty early. We have development teams over in Australia, which I'm still very, very tightly allocated to. That's legacy locals. So, like in reality, you know, my day starts at the moment I wake up, which is normally about 6 when the little boy's there. So and wakes up. And it doesn't stop. You know, whether it's a day of travel and you know working with one of the reps, or whether it's looking at you know existing customers and you know trying to understand how we can deepen our relationship in some way, shape, or form. You know, it's there all the way through to working alongside finance and saying, you know, we've got some outstanding invoices. How do we get them paid? How do we get them settled to product? What's our product strategy? Like there are so many things and guises that go through, let's call it a leadership role and responsibility that I never knew and I never believed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, no one day is the same.
Yeah. Is there anything?
That's challenging.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's what do you love most about your job?
People, unequivocally. And
what do you hate most?
People. No.
That's Connor again.
Yeah. No, so the thing I love most about my role is the people. You know, I'll segment it into the thing that I don't like most is bureaucracy and what I see as perceived wasted time. You know, I'm a very direct individual. You know, we're all busy. We're all, you know, we all have work to be done and to get done. You know, I don't sometimes have time for the putting in half an hour, putting in an hour for an hour's sake and having a catch up.
What could be 3 minutes type of thing? Yeah. How do you get so like that? I mean, I would say there'll be a ton of companies and business leaders in exactly the same boat as you that just absolutely that get destroyed or their day gets destroyed because of that. How do you either solve that? Like, do you solve that now? If there's things that you've been able to kind of implement into your day and your week and etc. structure wise that solves for that, or is there other things, advice you'd give to companies if they're going through the same ball ache that you are?
Yeah, I think so. Sales leadership, in my opinion, is coaching. It's a coaching role, right? And you know, to his credit, and he'll probably chin me for this if he ever watches this. You know, a guy called Andrew Roscoe, CCO, sorry, of Descartes. You know, when I took on the VP role in Europe, he was like, "It's a coaching role." I was like, "Yeah, I think it is, but the team's pretty good." No, it's a coaching role. Like it absolutely is. I used to be in deals all the time. I would say 60% of my day, I was on a customer call with a rep. And the one thing I've changed is I will not join those calls.
Yeah,
because you,
interesting.
and by the way, you used to do this as a leader in our world, and I think we all took that step away because some of us said, well, back off, get out of this deal. But some people want you in that deal because they know you're going to handle it, and then they can absolve responsibility if things don't go their way. Well, but you were in there and you saw that happen. It's like, well, yeah, I did, but I didn't see everything, and so taking myself out of the actual call, I now spend, I would say, 3 hours a day on, so we use Gong as a tool and a functionality to coach, learn what are they talking about, how are they talking about it, and then work with them on those plans, on how to improve it, how to adjust it, how to tweak that talk track, or how to mitigate the risk that we see coming in the deal. So that, I think, is probably a big part of what I've done over the past kind of year to 18 months, specifically, in terms of blocking my day out so that people can't put those meetings in the diary. And we always the worst people are the most available people. All right? Yeah, I'm available. Are you available and I've got your 100% undivided attention, or are you available and I've got you at 70%? Because 70% isn't good enough in highly complex, lengthy deal cycles with enterprise organizations. You need to be at minimum 95% there in that conversation.
Yeah.
In that discussion with either a rep, a product, whatever it comes to. And so for me, that's a big change that I've made. Let's call it transitioning from small co into large co.
And so see with some of that coaching stuff, so you mentioned some of the tech stack you have there. What do you find is some of the most kind of, I guess, just like maybe if you give us like 3 examples of like things that you have been able to do, because obviously I know that your deals primarily are enterprise size, large organizations, you're dealing with pretty complex sales cycles and process, etc., and complex platform that you sell. By stepping away and having like one step removed, which I totally agree with, and now you've got the tech to be able to observe and stuff, what are the 3 things that you're seeing you've been able to kind of maybe help a rep that's unreal at what they do, but everybody needs coached? Like, LeBron James still needs coached. It's like one of those things, right?
Yeah, I think, well, the first one is...
And I'm not comparing Connor to LeBron James, just to be clear.
If he watches this, he'll love that, by the way. Which is, thanks for building him up. No, so what are the 3 things? First of all is being able to upskill somebody in, let's call it an area, a discussion point that they need to be upskilled in. And that could be knowledge factor around, big box home delivery as one of our core sectors or markets, right? They didn't know something about something and maybe got tripped up on part of the conversation. It's being able to see trends of their types of conversation and like the devil in the detail. So that's number 1. Number 2 is let's call it the professionalism or way people interact. One of the things that I've noticed is if a rep is super quick to respond or almost to butt into somebody's question or feedback or thoughts, that's not a good thing. First of all, the tools we have AI and they have let's call it segments in there, so we can look at those things. And you kind of sort of have to reflect yourself. Is like if you're going into a car showroom. I use car showrooms a lot because it's something that you do not every day, but you do fairly regularly over the course of your driving career. But if you walk into a car showroom and you ask somebody, can I look? And before you've even said look at the EV3 or whatever car you're looking at, they've got the keys to another car. You're like, well, I don't want that one. So, like you're almost predicting what they're going to say before they've even finished, and so that is a big coachable moment for a lot of the team. And then the last piece is documentation or supporting information. One thing that, and again, I've done with my team is on every conversation that we have internally, by the way, this is not just external, deal discussions, but internally as well, is what is the one thing that you have to walk out the door after this 30 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever length of time, and then you have to revisit that. And every single person, we will have IT, we will have procurement, we will have sales, we will have operations, we will have logistics, we will have fleet, as part of these conversations. They're all going to want different things. So the question is, how do you understand who's the most valuable individual in the room at that particular point in time, and what is the one thing that they want to walk away with? And if you can tick all of those boxes, then you're in a really good spot. If you haven't ticked those boxes, but what have you just spent the last 60 minutes discussing?
Yeah.
Because they told you what you wanted, but you didn't give it to them. So you're not guessing. And we've been on discovery calls, we've been on demos, with organisations where what we think they want to see, because we've had one conversation with the logistics director, yada yada, and then you've got 4 other people, and they don't want to see that. They want to see integration. They want to see how this would work, how that would work. We haven't even prepped that. You never know. You're never going to believe it. We're going to discover a bit more as to why that's important. And then in the background, we're going to work alongside, because we've got a village, not an individual, working on how can we demonstrate that, shortly and quickly. Those are probably the 3 things that I think I've been able to have the most material impact to the growth of the team and the growth of our businesses.
And what I would say, from my experience working with you guys and your team, I'd say hands down are one of the best sales teams that we've worked with. The detail, the depth, and don't get me wrong, we don't always see eye to eye, which is important in a partnership. But I have to say, the quality, and we talk a lot about this, and we talk a lot about you guys internally. It's fantastic. So if MD's listening to this and they are struggling with enterprise sales or complex sales cycles or whatever it might be, my advice to anyone would be to reach out to you and pick your brain about some of this stuff, because it's been honestly, to see it, and I no one should take that kind of compliment lightly, because it's a big one, I would say, because I'm around a lot of teams, a lot of salespeople. What can I ask one thing though? What do you do to stay really sharp on this stuff and to develop? Is there any specific things that you do regularly that other people could maybe try and do?
I'm a podcaster.
Yeah.
I will listen to.
Who do you listen to from a sales world that you love? Or is it business in general, or is it?
It's mainly business in general.
Yeah.
I would say not specifically sales focused. And again, I think as a VP of sales, you're not just sales.
Yeah, 100%.
You have a much broader commercial role within an organization than just selling the next deal, right? And I think that is a massive misconception of you just sell. Like, I think there's a huge thing in that, and that, maybe that's just Descartes world, but I think generally speaking,
I completely agree. And what podcasts do you listen to regularly? Then what do you like?
I'd say probably the most regular one that I will listen to is the High Performance podcast. For 3 reasons. One is, my attention span is relatively limited and relatively light. A podcast for me needs to be an hour-ish, give or take, right? And I appreciate we've probably been talking for a bit longer than an hour, so I've quashed
my own editing, don't worry.
Yeah, quashed my own thing. But the people and the individuals, they resonate with me. It's and the minute that you can bring in something from an external world, for me is fantastic. Bringing in the world of Lando Norris and let's call it his 3 non-negotiables and understanding what they are. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's interesting. Like, what why is that a non-negotiable for him? And that for me is super interesting. The other thing I'm going to say about sales podcasts, right? The predominant, and when I joined Locals way back when, let's call it my first leadership role in some way, shape, or form, I was super intrigued by sales podcasts. The one thing that every sales podcast said is pipeline is king. And to coin your phrase, that's absolute pish. It's absolutely not true. because you can have a pipeline full of absolute tosh, and it's not going to win your business, And so the devil in the detail, the things that matter is what's real. And I spent 6 months of my role here when I joined the team getting rid of stuff that we knew was never going to happen, was not in our ideal customer profile, was not good time investment from the team or the business, because we were doing business in an area or in a country that we've never done business before. We'd probably need somebody local language, at which point I've got to go and hire somebody else. And it makes sense. Like, get out the door. Stick to what we know and stick to what we do. Predominantly every sales podcast, I'd say that was probably 90% really. How talked about how are you building your pipeline. So, well, no, how are you building real? That's more important to me than building a pipeline. Yes, there's a notion of it will follow, but you don't want to win everything. All business is good business.
No, I agree with that completely.
Being a small business owner, your first customer is probably one of the hardest things that you ever want to land. For me, we spent a lot of time walking away from that. So that's why I've probably avoided sales podcasts as traditional into more mindset focused ones.
And you know what's interesting, and I'm conscious of time, so we will close, is that when it comes to sales or sales and market or what have you, like strong business people, it's just communicating effectively. It's just, and it's not. I think what I really dislike about sales, and often then by default sales podcasts, is that you're almost looking for a way to like headlock your way into a meeting, or to like crowbar yourself in, or objection handle the life out of someone so they beg you for submission to get a meeting. And it's like, fucking hell, guys, like if it's that hard, it's not right. And it's maybe not that it's not right ever, it's just not right now, and stuff. So, and I think that's what comes back to. It's like living in the real world is super important. And I think like also when you look at and listen to a lot of sales and I'm not trying to dig anyone out, but like when you listen to it, it's almost like people that haven't really done the job or been through it or been in leadership, and they've almost not got that test of time. And I hope I'm not now this, I'm 39, but like, you can't be, you've got to do all these years of hard work, right? Because I don't think like that. But I think you do need a certain level of repetition and experience to be able to make decisions at a bigger level, at a business level on stuff. And I think if you're maybe new in sales, or you're maybe new to the world of business or whatever, I think you do have to be kind of careful like what and who you listen to. And I'm a big believer in looking at people's experience. And I always laugh at these people that like sell these courses, like they become like a guru. They learn how to do meta ads, and they then sell a course on like fuck knows what. And I've got one of my really good friends is a very successful property developer, and he's worked so hard, and he's done super like amazingly well, and he deserves it all. But like, and he always just takes the piss because he's like, and he always references these people that have maybe had a couple of bits of success, and then they now pivot to sell courses, and it's just, you're almost on the take. And I think you've just got to be really careful in like who you're listening to. And I think look at people's experience, look at people who have been successful over time, and also then look at the bigger picture. So not just a narrow portion of business, looking at business in general, like sales, marketing, finance, operations. It's the whole thing, HR, whatever. So, but yeah, so I actually completely agree. And for anybody that's not connected to you, Gary, where would you recommend? LinkedIn, best place to connect?
Yeah. I mean, for me, LinkedIn's definitely it's one of those apps that you kind of love and you hate. It's one of the first ones you open in the morning. I think I'm going to try and take it off at some point in my time. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best case. I do want to just add something to what you were just saying there in terms of the experience, if that's okay. Again, appreciate time. I think that again, let's go to the misconception of salespeople. I think now we have this whether it's medpick, whatever process that you follow from a sales methodology standpoint, the view from, let's call it a customer perspective, is you're just trying to get the greatest return on investment, the greatest value of what it's going to do for your business, so that you can increase your price. And I think that's so wrong. That's so wrong. What salespeople are inherently trying to do isn't increase the price artificially, but what they're trying to do is work out, are you as the customer worthwhile me spending time with? Because if my product's 100 grand and your business looks for 10 times ROI, but your ROI, let's call it your value of your problem within your business, is 250k, the reality is I'm probably not going to spend the time with you because you're not going to go ahead with the project anyway. So you're going to waste your time and ours anyway. Whereas I think the conception is you're as a salesperson trying to understand how much money I can get out of you. And again, I talk to that greed perspective. That's what everyone's perspective of sales is, but it shouldn't be. And I think we all, as sales podcasts, I think if customers ever listen to a sales podcast, they'd be like, all salespeople are arseholes.
Yeah.
Because you're tactically trying to close me, or tactically trying to. It's no, actually, what we're tactically trying to do is understand: is this project real, and or is there more of a chance that this is going to be a no decision, and you're not going to do anything, or you're going to choose something that's 20-25% of the cost of our particular product with lesser functionality, and I think that's a conception that we have to try and change within the sales world and the sales industry.
And last question. How do you do that then? Like, what have you got? One answer on how you do that effectively?
Again, be a good person. To me, it's be a good person. Like, speak open, speak honestly, and share that direction. I think one thing that's worked for certainly for us over the course of the last year, and we've grown a lot. I think we're certainly almost triple digits kind of year on year in terms of new business bookings, which is fantastic. One of the first things we do is we talk about why we're asking these questions. We're not talking about, when's your project, yada, yada. We're telling them, like, look, we've seen this before. We want to make sure you're not wasting your time, we're not wasting our time. But also be a good person. Tell them when you think you're not a good fit. Most salespeople will go, I could probably squirm something out of it. And that's where you sat there going, just move on. You should both move on as customer and prospects. Yeah. So be a good person on a human level, and I think that leads into leadership pretty well if you can demonstrate that to customers and that to your team as well.
Unreal, Gary. What a note to finish on. Thank you very much for the time, mate. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch up very soon for a few years.
Great to chat, and look forward to seeing you guys grow.
Yeah, top man. Appreciate it, Gary. Take care,
mate. Thanks, guys.
Bye.